Good morning. We've got your energy stories for the second week of August 2021. And we certainly saw some pretty bad news coming out of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change yesterday. If you haven't seen that, it's worth looking at the summary. Basically, the news is pretty bad that the temperatures we were expecting to see in 2050, everything advances about a decade. So the message is we got to get moving a lot faster than we're doing right now if we want to mitigate the worst impacts of potential global climate change. And we're already living in part of it. Well, there are certainly some technologies that can help us address those issues. So let's start with electric vehicles. We're going to talk a lot about EVs this week. First, U.S. sales. Pure Electrics finally cleared the 100,000 mark for a quarter in the United States, where battery electrics hit 118,000, 2.7% of the market, and plug-ins and hybrids topped 258,000 at 5.8% of the market. So for the year to date, U.S. sales of cars with plugs stood at 681,000 at 8% of the total market. Guess which OEMs stole the show yet again? That would be Tesla, selling one of every 3 cars in that pure electric sector. Ford is also aiming to narrow the gap, at least somewhat, and for the first time, the company announced it will spend more in 2023 on electric vehicles than on internal combustion vehicles. Ford also announced that sales and reservations of its electric cars have brought in over 70% of new customers to the Ford brand, pulling them away from other brands. So they're pretty excited about where this could take them in the future, and it's certainly just in time. Meanwhile, Korea's Hyundai just revealed details on its Ioniq 7 SUV that will come out in a couple of years. It has an 800-volt platform with 350 kilowatt rapid charging capability, which will allow you to get about 62 miles of range in 5 minutes. Hyundai's head of electrification development group also noted that the car might accommodate wireless charging. That would be the first time that's been done, and the company's been addressing many of the technical challenges in that area. The car is also expected to have a range of approximately 400 miles. The overall EV space is expanding rapidly. Last week, spurred by the Biden administration, the 3 largest U.S. automobile manufacturers issued a joint statement saying they are targeting between 40 and 50% of total car sales to be electrics, plug-ins, or fuel cells by 2030. Shortly after that announcement, Nissan joined in and said, "We will too." Aspirational words? Maybe. But the trend towards electrification of transportation is very clear at this point. That electrification trend also appears to be spreading to aircraft. DHL Express just announced an order of the first 12 Alice electric aircraft from Israel's Eviation for 2024 delivery. DHL's plan is to be the first, quote, emissions-free transport network, with the planes being charged during the loading and unloading process. And they'll have 60 kilowatt engines to be powering those planes. It seems we can't go a week without a hydrogen story, and this week is no exception. BNEF indicated in a recent report that, largely due to activities in China, green hydrogen activity has doubled this year over last year. The market for electrolyzers, those are the devices that convert water with electricity into H2O, that market's going to grow rapidly. It could exceed 2 gigawatts by year's end. China will be responsible for over 60% of new global electrolyzer installations, and BNEF reports that more government-induced demand will be necessary to keep up with the planned electrolyzer capacity expansion that's been announced by the OEMs to date. And finally, on a completely different note, having to do with offshore wind, U.S. Wind announced last week that it's significantly expanding its wind project off the Maryland coast in the United States, going from 270 megawatts, slated for the year 2025, and expanding that to 1,200 megawatts by 2028. To support the 82 turbines required for the entire project, the company also announced it will be developing a 90-acre steel production facility close to Baltimore. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.